That sound gets a little bit better every single time I hear it. Marco, fantastic job with that. Fantastic choice. Fantastic choice. Welcome everybody back to the Full Court Press. I believe this is episode 6, and it's playoff time. We got some playoffs hoops to talk about, but before anything, we have the man himself, top left, the host of the 5 Reasons the post-game show, Playoff Royal, who showed up perfectly on time today. I think. Royal, how we doing tonight? How we feeling?
The boy feeling good. I mean, aside from what we saw last night, I'm feeling okay. We got a lot of good basketball going on, so I've been excited to get the playoffs started and just to watch a little bit of everybody.
Yeah, it's much nicer when you're not a fan. So right. Just being able to watch actual NBA and you don't have to have this emotional investment is much easier to watch the game. Ariel, Marco, how we doing tonight?
Pretty good. I mean, I'm right there with Royal. Last night was tough, but hey, we're lucky, man. I mean, the playoffs have been phenomenal. All the game ones that we've seen up until now. Notice how I said game ones have been, super competitive, super entertaining. The games have been great, so I'm in a great mood.
Okay, Marco?
Yeah, every other basketball I've seen outside of that last game with Miami and Milwaukee has been awesome. So I just love talking about basketball. I hate the hand wringing on basketball Twitter sometimes, but it's basketball. We all love it.
It's much easier to have a nuanced conversation here as opposed to scrolling through the timeline and just seeing some trolls. It's very frustrating. But anyways, let's get to the topics because we got some good stuff to talk about today. Arrow, you kind of hinted to it. These playoffs have been really good to start, whether it's the play-in game where the Western Conference play-in games was must-see TV. I mean, Lakers-Warriors was everything advertised and more. And then Grizzlies-Warriors was one hell of a game, and the team that no one thought was going to win won. So, Royal, we'll start with you. How have you thought the start of this playoffs has gone? Like, in comparison to other years, how round one has worked out, how do you feel about these specific playoffs to start?
So I think it's been interesting because with the play-in tournament, we got to see a lot of teams that ended up playing up until the very end of the season for seeding and stuff. So players aren't as well rested coming into these series as they were previously. However, you see that could work in reverse in terms of how like Memphis and Utah played. Utah looked a bit rusty without Donovan Mitchell, and Memphis came in there hungry and were able to steal game one and essentially home court advantage throughout this series. So it's been really interesting to see how that dynamic has worked out. Stop. No, keep going. But no, it's been really interesting to see how that dynamic has worked out. But overall, I think we've gotten some very good games from almost every game was pretty good, like coming into this opening round. All the game ones were good.
Yeah,
we'll see how the game twos go.
Yeah, we'll see tonight. I mean, we got 3 great games tonight: Celtics, Nets, Lakers, Suns, and Clippers, Mavs. So crazy that they're making the Clippers and the Lakers play at the same time. I find it slightly disrespectful to the Clippers to do that, but there aren't even Clippers fans, so I guess it works itself out. Marco, your thoughts on this opening weekend, huh?
Billy Crystal is a Clippers fan.
Long time from like when they sucked too. I don't even that guy. Hey, you got to give it to him. That's dedication.
This is true. Clipper Daryl. There's a handful, very small amount. But Marco, Mr. Romo, your thoughts?
Sorry. Well, there's this somebody was talking about this. I saw on basketball Twitter a while ago how there's an incentive to play your guys more when you're like essentially a lottery team. Like I guess the Raptors were up until that last week. You saw them were like, okay, we're going to try here for a bit. Where in the past years, you would have seen them be like, no, we're going to trade everybody by the deadline. We're doing all this. That was a lot of teams like that, like on the fringe, to say like that. They could have been playing for lottery balls like Chicago. They wanted to get in. These teams want to – they live in major markets, so, they're trying to get as much revenue as they can. And that, like, that slips over into the playoffs where you have these teams that are on – they're, like, been in playoff mode for, like, a month? So they're like constantly, they're like already like designing like we're gonna do this and that and this, but like as soon as the playoffs comes, you're already in that mode, so you don't have to turn that switch on that everybody wants to turn on as soon as the playoffs start. So that helps the first round matchups as well because like everybody's in that mode already, so nobody has to gear up to get into that like next gear So it's been fun to see. I especially like. I think it was the Celtics Nets game. Everybody thought that would be the worst game of the weekend, and
Myself included.
yeah, and it was. But you saw how competitive it was up until that late, the middle of the fourth quarter, really.
Mhm.
And that was like the worst game of the weekend, which is like a huge deal. The last like best first round we had was like 2014, I want to say, where I think we had like most of the series go into Game 7. So hopefully we get that again this year. That would be really fun.
It would be awesome. I mean, that's the goal, right? Like you want to see as many games as possible, and Game 7 is the best moment in all of sports. So I totally agree. Ariel, thoughts on this weekend?
Thoughts on this weekend is the the whole idea of tanking and that there's perhaps not as much value in just barely making the playoffs or making the playoffs as a lower seed should be out the window now, because I think in the West it was 3 of the 4 series the higher seeded team lost game 1, right? Like I believe the Jazz lost, the Clippers and the Nuggets both lost.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and then in the Eastern Conference, like Marco was getting to. Celtics Nets was close. Heat Bucks game 1 was razor thin. So these Hawks Knicks, the Knicks the Hawks ended up winning that game. Technically, are they the 5 seed or the 4 seed? I just confused myself.
The Knicks are the 4 seed.
They're the 5 seed, correct? Yeah, the Knicks are the 4 seed. That matchup's a little bit closer than the other ones, but still, like you don't expect the Grizzlies to go out there and actually win the series against the Jazz. I know that Donovan Mitchell missed that game, so we don't want to overreact or read too much into winning that game. But it's just like winning games like that, just making the playoffs and then having success. Not getting swept, not getting beat 5-1 maybe in the first round holds a ton of value for a lot of these smaller market or just generally less successful teams. So I thought it was a great weekend for basketball. I thought the games were great, like we've all been saying, super competitive, and I'm excited for the games going forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Marco, to your point where you were saying that teams are really trying and they're getting their guys out there, I think what the play-in showed us is because people expected the Warriors to make the play-in game. They didn't expect the Grizzlies to be here. But the Grizzlies getting here and then showing up in game 1 against the Jazz, I mean, they were down 12 early in that game and they came back. Being able to do that and show that resiliency and get that playoff experience, I think is invaluable for a young team like Memphis. Like you see Ja taking steps. You see Dylan Brooks. I mean, Dylan Brooks always thinks Dylan Brooks has it in him, but Dylan Brooks showing that he has it in him on the big stage. Those things, like maybe they don't translate to getting the highest pick in the draft, but you are developing a team that is hungry, has experience, and knows how to win in the playoffs. That means so much to making the most of those opportunities as a small market team. So I think the play-in has worked beautifully. I think the playoffs have started beautifully. And these series have all been off to a compelling start, except maybe for Heat Bucks based on the way that second game went. But we'll see. It's still a 7-game series. It's still 2 games to be played in Miami. We'll get to the Heat Bucks, though. We'll get there. Let's start with a playoff series that you guys want to talk about. And Ariel, we'll start with you. Actually, no, we won't start with you.
You know where I'm going.
With you.
Yeah.
Marco, what one series that you want to talk about in general?
This is actually a good segue to who you were talking about, the Grizzlies, John Morant. I want to talk about the Grizzlies Jazz series. I really love how they're displaying the stars in that series. And by stars, I mean just John Morant. Because that dude is must-watch TV. Anytime he's on the floor, I'm glued to wherever he is. I've loved every second of watching the Grizzlies this year. There's a part of me that might be disappointed that we're not watching Steph Curry, but I don't care when I get to watch John Morant, the next great point guard in the league. He's gonna have the crown after Steph retires. Maybe he's gonna be battling for that crown at least. There's like so many good point guards out there. Mm-hmm. And I just love how he's being displayed for the national audience right now.
Yes.
I guess he's had the spotlight already, being the rookie of the year, but everybody thought that should have been or would have been Zion if he didn't get hurt. So everybody kind of like brushed it off. Kendrick Nunn finished second. So I was like, it was a fake season or whatever. I just love watching John Morant, and I love that he's being displayed out in full force. And it's a small market team, so that's a big deal. When people weren't technically gonna be watching this series, I guess everybody was like, nobody's gonna watch Grizzlies Jazz. Who cares about this series? Well, like the ratings just came out. Apparently, they were the 4th most watched. They were more watched than the Celtics or the Bucks and Heat game was. So that was surprising to me.
That's
And the
crazy.
fact that he's being put out in full force by the NBA in this sort of manner is great for the league in general. And it's against a team like Utah, who generally doesn't bring in this much this viewers like that. And I'm also in love with the way he's attacking the Jazz. He's punishing them for not coming up to the level of the screen, and we'll see how they adjust to that. How Ja has been able to play with Rudy Gobert essentially. He's been kind of disguising how he's going to play off of that screen. He might attack. He might pull that little floater. Memphis loves the floater, and I love watching them. They're the floatiest team in the league against a team like Utah, who doesn't allow shots at the rim. They're going to give you that shot, that medium range shot. So it's been fun to watch that battle go on. And I'm really interested to see how Utah adjusts to that, how Donovan Mitchell adjusts to coming back in the game. There's even drama there with the Donovan Mitchell situation, though.
Yeah.
I think that series kind of has everything. It could be a good upset, and if not, it'll be just fun watching Ja kind of blossom in his first series.
Ja's first series, and most people, they see Ja highlights, but they don't watch full Ja games. And I think that's the big difference here. Being able to watch what Ja's able to do for a full, he doesn't play 48 minutes, but for a full 48 minutes or 36 minutes, however many he's playing, is going to be eye-opening for a lot of people because dude is talented. Maybe he's not all the way there. There's obviously some places where he can improve and whatnot, but the way he's able to control the pace as well as being just one of the most athletic players on the floor that I've ever seen is crazy. Royal, Ariel, any particular thoughts on this Jazz-Memphis series? Do you think the Grizzlies have a real chance of winning this series?
No. I don't believe that they have a real shot at winning the series. I do agree with Marco's point that they shoot a lot of floaters, which is extremely effective against somebody like Rudy Gobert. It's a very good shot when you have somebody like that in there. But look, I'm impressed watching Ja in his first series, watching Dylan Brooks get an opportunity to show his skills on the playoff stage. So, I think they're a great young team, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do with this opportunity in the playoffs against the number one seed.
My thoughts on it are, man, I think you guys have encapsulated it pretty well. Ja's special. This is, I think, going to be his coming out party. Love the way that he's able to take advantage of the way that the Jazz play defense and how Rudy Gobert frequently drops. If he's playing a little bit higher up on that drop, or on the pick and roll rather, he's able to better contest those floaters and all the stuff that Ja has and some of their guards have in the intermediary areas. But the deeper he is, the more they can take advantage of that. If Dylan Brooks continues to go off like this, I don't think the Grizzlies can win this series, especially assuming that Donovan Mitchell gets back in the next game and he's healthy and he's good to go. But I think they can give the Jazz some problems because they like to play pretty fast. They're not the grit and grind Grizzlies that we grew up watching, and they're just a fun team. They're super fun. But I want to address – I just saw a comment. Where was it? I think it was
Clarence?
Yeah, from Clarence. Something about –
Clarence, always asking good questions. We love your comments, Clarence. We love your
Absolutely. Good question. Is it fair to say New Orleans made a mistake by not taking Ja? I don't think it's fair to say that. I think maybe you can make an argument, but I'm firmly in the Zion was the right pick there. Zion is a whole other level of transcendence. That dude is, he's got all these. Look, he's objectively probably not in the shape that he needs to be, yet he's able to legitimately eviscerate defenses where he's only scoring from generally one area on the court. You know what he's going to do, and you generally just can't stop it. He
just goes left. He just catches the ball in the paint and goes left, and there's nothing that any human can do.
Nothing you can do to stop it. So when that dude develops and gets a jump shot, I think he becomes maybe the best player in the league, or at the very least, somewhere up there. I'm not taking Ja over him, but I think Ja is super special.
I think we also have to keep it in perspective when it comes to the Ja versus Zion. They had just traded Anthony Davis. They needed somebody who was going to be box office immediately. It's been a couple of years since they've had anybody come into the league with the same kind of fanfare as Zion. So I think that was the only choice New Orleans could have made in that situation. Otherwise, they would have been rioting on Mardi Gras.
Royal, hindsight 2020. Are you still taking Zion over Ja?
Personally, in the draft, I would have took Ja over Zion. I think Zion, while great, I don't want to take anything away from this man's game. I don't think throughout the course of his career he's going to grow enough to be able to make other people better, as opposed to Ja, who came into the league with that skill set and he can grow in other areas. I think Zion is going to be the focal point of your offense for as long as he's in the league. And that body, it does worry me. You know what I mean? But it hasn't shown itself to be like what I thought it would be. I thought he would get injured a lot early on. but I mean, he was pretty durable this year. But yeah, in terms of I would have took Ja because I think Ja can make other people better, and Zion is just going to be the focal point of your offense, and he's always going to need other people around him to create a championship contending team.
Ooh,
I think also
go ahead, Marco.
Want to give credit to Memphis's front office for building a good team around Ja, where New Orleans hasn't done that for Zion. We'll see if a better team goes with Zion eventually. But that kind of goes to Royal's point, I guess, to that he's very heliocentric and that it's very hard to put a team around him because he's very unique kind of guy that we never had this kind of guy in the league. So it's a lot harder to build around him. But also the Pelicans have done a really bad job of building the team around him. So I guess we'll give it time, but I see what points that Royal's making.
Yeah, it's certainly that's certainly one approach, right? The one that New Orleans took, where they said, "Hey, we probably our young guys, Zion, Brandon Ingram, they probably flourish best in a faster-paced, more up-tempo type of offense. You know what? Let's sign Steven Adams to a 4-year, I don't know how many $1 million deal,
And get Eric Bledsoe.
And have Steven Adams just clog the paint. Eric Bledsoe, who can't play basketball anymore, and let's see how well. He's not in the same type of position that Ja is in. I think Ja has a really good, really promising young team around him
With a great coach.
That's a great point. With a great coach. So it's not quite apples to apples in terms of the situation that they're both in. But I see you guys' argument. I don't agree with it, but I think it's a good argument.
Well, hold on. Just saying though, like, wouldn't you say that Zion has the more established players around him in Brandon Ingram? Well, Brandon Ingram out of both of those rosters is probably the most established good. I'm sorry if you guys hear my son in the background, but
there's fans in, like, the fans are back. That's all it is.
Right, that's all it is. That's the crowd chanting my name. But yeah, I think Zion has players who are more like Jaren Jackson Jr. is still an ascending player. Dylan Brooks still an ascending player, and while Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball are both also ascending, they came in with a little bit more cachet than those guys that are around Zion. I mean, Ja. I think Ja was the missing piece to that young team, as opposed to Zion. Like, you put him in the plot of them trying to build something, and now they have to completely rebuild it. Like, it's not going to work with the way that they were going prior to getting Zion, as opposed to Memphis that just added Ja, and it kind of just took off from there.
Mm-hmm.
That's honestly a fantastic point. Like, Ja really has been that missing link. So, Royal, fantastic point, as always. I don't remember the last time you were wrong, if ever. So, we'll keep it moving, though. Royal.
This is our show.
Hold on. I do have a question for Royal.
What's going on?
My man, would you say, though, that Ja fits much better in today's league than a Zion would? Because if you notice, the big man, Jokic, Embiid, Gobert, right? But then you have Zion. Zion's not even close to their size, but the man has hustle. He has strength. He has all these other things. But in today's NBA, it's about the guards being able to make plays, running up and down, being able to get that mismatch through the pick and roll. It's going to be interesting to see how Zion develops. Not to say that he's not going to be an all-star, because to me he is. But I don't think he'll be that piece to say, he's going to be the best player in the drafts. Because to me, Ja, he's growing up so fast, so quickly, but the man is so poised. And it's in big time games, though, right? It's last year they battled to make it in, which they didn't. This year they're on a roll, right? And now they're going into Utah. I think game 2 is what? It's not tonight, right? It's tomorrow.
No,
yes.
tomorrow.
Mitchell's coming back, but Ja's not scared of that. I mean, he just beat Steph Curry. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you something, Manny, that my mom always told me. You ain't got to be scared to get your ass whooped, and I think that's what's going to end up happening with them. So to answer your question, like, succinctly, no, I don't think either one of them is more built for today's NBA than the other. Ja, for the guard position, is kind of what the league is moving towards, but I believe you could plop Zion in any era, and he's just going to be extremely difficult to deal with in terms of trying to guard him because of that size, combination of athleticism, and his touch around the rim. So I think Zion would have been effective across several eras, including this one. And Ja maybe as well, because Ja's just a very skilled, very smart, a very crafty young guard. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm done with my answer.
Well, I think, Royal, we honestly might go straight back to you. There is Baby Royal making an appearance once again, of course. Which series do you want to address? Maybe not Heat Bucks, because we'll get to that eventually, but which one would you like to address?
Oh, no problem. So I'm going to teach Ariel a thing about tipping his hand because I'm probably going to steal the series that he wanted to talk about, and I'm going to talk about the Clippers in Dallas.
Okay.
Like Miami versus Milwaukee, I think this is the only grudge match that we have in terms of last year playoff matchups that came back.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a bit there to the Clippers being embarrassed last year, not by this team, but kind of like the whole memory of the bubble. And Dallas played a role in that with Luka's game winner from last year. But I think this series, everybody has their eyes focused on what Kawhi is going to do. If this team goes out of this in the first round, especially in embarrassing fashion, then he's out of there. Like it, or I feel like I feel personally, I feel like he wants to stay, but there's legitimacy to saying that he might want to leave after a team getting embarrassed like that. They are the higher seed, and they lost that game by 10 points, I think. And it looked like they had no answer for Luka Doncic. I didn't see anything in that game that made me think that Dallas couldn't do it again, and again, and again. Like there's some legitimate problems with the Clippers roster construction, and I think part of that got exposed in the playoff series in game one. And if it shows its face for the rest of this series, then I think we could be looking at some wholesale changes for the Clippers going forward.
Ooh, Manny had to expose me with the 5 reasons comment there. Yeah, I do have the Clippers in the finals. I'm sticking with that. Listen, the Clippers shot. I'm not gonna go all Clipper here. I don't give a shit if they win or lose, honestly. But at the same time, I think there was a bit of a flukiness or some noise in that game with Mavs Clippers because the Mavs shot the ball 47% from 3. The Clippers who are the best shooting team in the league, shot the ball 27% from 3. So just natural regression will have the Clippers shoot the ball better. But to your point, they don't have an answer for Luka. And Luka, he didn't have to steal you that game. That was a team win. Luka can steal you 1 or 2 games. So if that happens, you're looking at a 6 or 7 game series. That is tough for the Clippers. And then moving forward, I mean, playing against the Jazz, most likely that'll not be an easy series for the Clippers as well. But I'm interested to see what's going to happen tonight because if Luka's able to go there and win 2 in a row in Los Angeles, although they don't have really a home environment or whatever, then the Mavs can seriously win the series in like 5 because the Mavs have home court. They have fans. They have a great coach. They have a great star. They have a good environment and all that good stuff. So it could get ugly quick for the Clippers. I feel like this is almost a must-win game for them. And sub 1, 2, 3, to your points, I would love to see Kawhi Leonard play in Miami. I would love to see the Clippers lose in 4 and me be wrong about the Clippers this year because that likely means that Kawhi needs to pick a different team. But at the same time, I think that the Clippers still should be good in the series. They still should be able to win it. But there is some legitimate questions as to how they can stop Luka. And if you can't, then this series could go the distance.
I think we also, I think most of the NBA fans in general kind of underestimated Luka's ability. Like, he's reached that level of a LeBron type. He's not, to LeBron's level, but, he's like that guy he'll get you at least 1 game in a series. And he'll probably get you 2 games in a series. He's not going to get swept probably ever in his career as long as there's a competent team around him. So I think we kind of underestimated that. I still think there's a lot the Clippers can do and probably will do in terms of probably harder trapping, putting different kind of dudes on him. Because I think they really didn't show their hand too much. But again, you're the Clippers. Show all of your hand because this is a rider. This is like your run.
You haven't won anything.
Yeah, you're not afforded that kind of, room for error anymore. And I think Ty Lue knows that. I'm interested to see what kind of things he adjusts to now. He's not going to give up those corner threes as much. I imagine he won't. But if he does, I'm guessing the Mavs will take that all day. And maybe it'll come down to who shoots better because the Clippers are the best shooting team in the league. People forget that. So we'll see.
I'm right there with Gad and Marco here. I do think there's some positive regression that's to be expected from the Clippers. I don't think they'll shoot that poorly again. The Mavericks are not a particularly good defensive team. I think that the Clippers, most namely, obviously Kawhi and Paul George, should be able to get more or less whatever they want in that series. The Mavs don't really have the perimeter defenders to generally bother Kawhi or Paul George. And I think the adverse is actually true when we're talking about Luka. I know Luka's spectacular. I agree with Marco that he stepped up to that level now where he's like this dude is coming for the crown. Like, I mean, he's right there. He might be there in a year or two. He might be like, he's right there. I don't know. I don't want to go too far with this, but
Go too far.
I'm not ready.
Okay.
I need to see a little bit more. I need them to sweep the Clippers or something.
Who is this competition, Ariel?
Who is currently still? Well, we're talking about the guys that are still at the top of the league, right?
Like, no, we're talking about who got next.
Who got next? Oh, he got next. If it's just who's got next, it's Luka. Like, there's nobody who's challenging him for that right now, in my opinion.
You're taking him over A. Disney?
A. Disney doesn't have next anything. Listen, bro, he's got the. No, I don't want to go there, but like, look, we're talking about young dudes who are coming for the crown. Like, you know how Giannis was putting the crown on his head? I believe it was like last year. That's Luka, man. And I think that he's elevated his game to such a level that, you know, you might have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the other side who are all-world defenders, two of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA when engaged. And they should be able to slow Luka down, but it kind of didn't matter in game one. I think the only real adjustment there is, as Marco alluded to, you're throwing more traps at Luka. You just, you got to get the ball out of his hands, but he's so calm and cool and collected. Yeah. You can't speed him up. Like, he's going to get the ball where he wants to. He's going to make the play and play at his own pace, regardless of what kind of defense you send at him. So I don't really know how much more the Clippers can do. I just think they're going to play more like themselves. Offensively, I expect them to score more than 103 points. They only turned the ball over 5 times in game one, and they just shot really poorly. If they shoot at their baseline level, they probably win that game. So I think that was an inspiring performance by Luka, but I do still expect the Clippers to win that series.
Pandemic P is a real thing. I just want to put that out there.
Hey,
it's crazy at this point because he before his injury. And even when he came back from his injury, I think with Indiana, that first series that he pushed LeBron to the greatest sweep of all time. Like, it was 4 straight games, but it was unbelievable to watch. PG was a dog in the playoffs, and he rose to the occasion. He was able to be that leader, and now being the sidekick to either Russell Westbrook or Kawhi Leonard, he's been unable. It's just so weird how that has happened. I don't really know what it is, but maybe at some point it clicks. We'll see. But if he's not able to play like Paul George, and this team is not maybe making it out of the first round, like, they would be in trouble. Before we get to the series that most likely all of us want to talk about, which is Heat Bucks, I want to touch on 2 series really quick. One, Knicks Hawks. That game delivered in a huge, huge, huge way. That was just really, really fun watching the end of that game. They were just going blow for blow. MSG was going crazy and then silent and then crazy and then ultimately silent, and Trae Young saying, "It's quiet as fucking here." Whatever, looking like a dirty Q-tip, but that boy showed up in his first playoff game. I just want to get quick predictions for you guys here. Who do you think wins this series? I know we had predictions last week, Roy. We never got yours, so we'll start with you. Who do you think wins this series after seeing game one?
Shit, like, this is one of those series where it was like a flip of a coin. You got one really good defensive team versus a really good offensive team, and I'm just going to lean defense, so I still got the Knicks in 7.
Ooh. Okay. I had Hawks in 6 going in. I'm sticking with that. Marco?
Ooh. I had Hawks in 7. I predicted the Trae Young game winner would come in game 7. But
this is true.
If it comes in game 1 and it still goes 7, I won't be complaining. Like Royal said, it's a flip of a coin series. I'm not gonna flip flop over it right now. I'm still gonna stick with Hawks in 7. But if they steal another one in New York, I think it's gonna go 6. But MSG might get a little louder for Trae. He might see more traps. I'm interested to see how they guard that pick and roll, because they had no answer for the pick and roll, the drag screens, the Spain pick and roll. They were like just hunting them down. They were like getting open shots from the corners, from the top of the key, a layup for Trae, a dunk for Capella. It was like they were picking whatever they wanted at the end of the game, and really throughout the game. So I'm interested to see if the Knicks trap more. Are they going to play differently if Nerlens Noel isn't out there? Because, he has the ankle injury. That's pretty big, because after Taj Gibson, there's not really a backup center for them, especially if Mitchell Robinson's got hurt and is out for the season. So I'm interested in that, because Capella, he's one of the best lob threats in the league, because he gets downhill so fast. He creates vertical spacing that is underrated for, like, big men right now. Creating vertical spacing is just as good as creating 3-point spacing. So, and I'm interested to see how the Knicks guard that, and if they ever adjust to it, and if they don't, I think I'm still sticking with Hawks in 7. If if they don't figure it out, it's going to be way shorter than I thought it was.
Yeah. I think I'm going to stick with my prediction of Knicks in 7, although my heart very, very much wants me to switch it up. I just can't justify doing that after one game. I don't expect Julius Randle to really play like that again. He dominated the Hawks in the regular season. I know the regular season is a whole other thing, but I think it's a decent matchup for him. I just thought he missed a lot of shots in that game. I expect him to play more up to his baseline. If when he does, I think the Knicks defense is able to slow. That's a ruthless comment, Ayan. Jesus Christ. I think if they're able to slow down Trae Young a little bit more, I like the idea of trapping a little more. But he might be another dude who's just ascending and just kind of turning himself into like a great playoff villain, where he's out there antagonizing MSG. Like that's the stuff that you build your playoff resume off of. Ice Trae is here, man. So I'm still sticking with Knicks in 7, but I'm waffling. I got to be honest. I'm on the edge here.
I do want to say that Nate McMillan needs to stop with these regular season rotations. You need to play your dudes more than 34 minutes a game. You can't be out here doing a Coach Bud impression. So if he keeps this up, I'm going to be feeling real shaky about my prediction. So he needs to clean that up. Also, a big thing people haven't pointed out is DeAndre Hunter is a great defender, and they didn't have him for a whole year. And to put on Julius Randle. I want to see him guarding Julius Randle way more. They started the game with him on him, but I'm surprised that they haven't, put him more on him at the end of the game. It was like he was guarding more on the perimeter. So I want to see DeAndre Hunter guarding him more because he's one of my favorite defenders to watch.
Yes.
He got really buff over
he's
the too.
He's a cool player. I like him.
If you
I also want to just quick acknowledgement. I'm sorry, Gad. I won't interrupt you again.
No, go ahead.
But I also want to say that I also have an irrational hatred for RJ Barrett. So I don't care who they put on him. Like I hope he does nothing in the playoffs, like ever, because he has zero bag. That boy has no moves whatsoever, except for go to the hole and throw up some shit.
That sounds, who that sounds like and who I compared him to the first episode that we had?
Don't do this. Please don't do this.
No, please do it.
No, I compared it to him. It's on record. I compared a 20-year-old RJ Barrett to 24-year-old Jimmy Butler. No bag, straight to the rim. That's all he is right now.
You should have listened to Ariel. Don't do that.
I'm just saying.
RJ,
who you described is who I've been seeing play for the Heat for the last 2 games.
I'm going to be quiet now.
I mean, listen.
He's absolutely correct.
I'm trying to have a good evening here.
I'm not trying to make an excuse for 8 of 37, 8 of 32, whatever it may be.
8 of 32.
But anyway,
I'm going to have nightmares about RJ Barrett or Jimmy Butler in the RJ Barrett jersey now.
Look at their numbers from Jimmy's year 2 season to RJ's year 2 season. It's much closer than it's nauseating how close it is, honestly. But anyways, I do want to talk about Trae Young here because I personally have been, at least maybe not on record, but to my friends, I have been vocal about not liking Trae Young. I think his game, he's been trying to be the next Steph Curry when in reality, Steph revolutionized the game. You can't do that. Trae can't come and try to be the same revolutionary type player that Steph has been. Instead, he's just playing his own game rather than trying to change the game. And he's gotten so much better. He is not taking insane high volume threes. He's taking just over 5 threes per game since Nate McMillan has become the head coach, and he's taking much less deep threes. Trae Young being able to play much smarter and not try to be this guy who's just making these crazy highlight shots has made him so much better. It's made this team so much better. And now he's the guy. He showed you he can be the vehicle of an offense for the entire game, and being able to do that, it's just credit to Trae Young. This series is going to be really, really, really fun to watch. I hope it goes to 7. I hope I'm wrong with the Hawks in 6, but I'm excited to see that. Anyways, let's get to the Lakers and Suns because the Suns won game 1. I just want to touch on this one really quickly. How are we feeling about this series? And Ariel, we'll start with you. Who do you have winning the series after seeing game 1 and the Suns' young guys really show out?
Before the series, I had the Suns in 7. I now have the Suns in 6. I cannot justify it by them just winning game 1 at home. I expected them to win game 1 at home. For some reason, and I think the reason is they play at a pace. Okay, I'll word it this way. They can play. They're more malleable in the way that they can play. in the sense that they can play slower and still be effective in a deliberate half court, type of game. They can also speed the game up. They've got, probably the next best guy in the NBA, or one of the next best guys in the NBA after LeBron James, at controlling the pace of the game in Chris Paul. Assuming that he's, good to go and he's healthy and there's nothing wrong with him. I just think if they want to play a little bit faster and get out in transition, they have the young guys, they have the athletes. I think that's a problem for the Lakers. It's not a good matchup for them in that sense. And they can hang with the Lakers in a slow, half-court, deliberate type of game. If LeBron's not at 100% and he's producing the way that he was in game one, now it's one game. So like he can come out tonight and just absolutely dominate that game and make me look like an idiot. But if he's not healthy, and that's the type of production you're getting from him, and he just doesn't look all the way there, and Anthony Davis is getting outplayed by DeAndre Ayton, the Suns are winning this series if these are trends that are going to continue. Now, I expect some of it to correct itself. Like, I don't think LeBron's just gonna, shoot. What did he go, like 6 of 13? Like, not be particularly aggressive, and if he's not healthy again, it's definitely a concern. But yeah, I just think the Suns have more. They have more good players. DeAndre Ayton outplaying Anthony Davis, like I said, is a massive problem. So I think I'm leaning Suns in 6. I think they have more ways to be effective in this series, whereas the Lakers have just one general style of basketball that they need to play in order for them to be successful.
Well, I like the point that Ariel made about being more malleable. That's like the perfect way to put it. And I had Lakers in 6 before this whole series started. But, man, watching LeBron out there, it's just not the same LeBron. His shots at the rim are, like, so low now. Like, when you were watching that Warriors game, those shots weren't coming in the paint. Like, he was out of the paint. He was shooting mid-range jumpers, long threes. Those aren't the shots LeBron James taking in the playoffs. Like, that's not the LeBron we've seen even last year. And LeBron was people forget he shot really good in the playoffs last year outside the paint. That's kind of what kept people from questioning his health. But this year it's a lot more magnified because he's coming back from that ankle injury. He's not trying to drive it to the paint as much. He's not generating those kickouts to the very little shooters that they do have, which is, I guess, just KCP at this point. And I don't feel good about my prediction if that's going to be the LeBron we continue to see. But, that might get offset by, like, Chris Paul's, like, shoulder, like, limping like a rag doll. So we don't know how that's going to affect him for the rest of the series. So maybe that might offset that. But I'm not going to feel good if Frank Vogel continues to start Andre Drummond for no discernible reason. I'm going to feel even worse about my prediction.
Royal can tell you the one reason Andre Drummond's starting at the 5.
Oh, yeah, it's because Anthony Davis is a pussy and doesn't want to play the 5. Like, I don't know if I can say that on this show. I'm sorry.
We can now.
Any AD slander is tolerated because
I forgot this actually goes on the pod feed, so I'm not supposed to say stuff like that. Hey, edit that out. But either way, that's the reason. AD is a pussy and doesn't want to play the 5. And so this is essentially what this all boils down to. And I think it's really simple. The Suns are a better team than the Lakers. I think that's what it is. I picked the Lakers I picked the Suns in 7 originally because I thought that we'd get a reinvigorated LeBron James or a motivated LeBron James. And he might be motivated, so I don't want to question his motivation, but I'm just not seeing playoff Bron. That's not what I'm seeing. Something, but it ain't that. Like, even in the play-in game, I didn't see him as aggressive as you customarily see LeBron James in a do or die game. So, like, I'm not saying that Anthony Davis is getting he can't play DeAndre Ayton to a draw. That can't happen in this series, and they expect to win. He has to dominate that matchup or even take on the challenge of that matchup. So that's the reason why you're going to see Andre Drummond start, because AD refused to play the 5, which gives the Lakers their best chance to win. So maybe the Lakers win tonight, but this is probably the most important game of their of this matchup for them. Because if they lose this one, then I might take this from Suns in 7 to Suns in 6 or Suns in 5, because they really need to get this game.
Ooh, I think it's interesting that you think it's like a must win for the Lakers. I still don't see it as that because they're going back to LA. I think this is a must win for the Suns, honestly, which is crazy to say. But I think the Lakers, like, first of all, I've seen LeBron drop so many game 1s and then the series just completely shifts after that. I don't know. He's like a cyborg in game 1. He's just collecting data. Then he shows up game 2 with an with a briefcase. He opens it up, the game plan, and he just executes the entire time. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did something similar to that today. But I don't know. I had Lakers in either 5 or 6 before, and I think I'm sticking with Lakers in 6 there. I still think it's a great series. I don't know. I just think that the Lakers eventually will turn it on. I think AD got punched in the mouth last game, and I think the Lakers are going to try to adjust. They have to start playing Marc Gasol more instead of Andre Drummond. I just don't think that you can play Drummond out there because at this point he's just a hairier, taller Precious Achiuwa, and that is not functional in the NBA playoffs. Like, you cannot do that playing with other non-3-point shooting threats all the time. Like, I don't know. I just think that the Lakers should be able to pull this series out. It'll be interesting to see, though, because the Suns, with their ability to attack in the half court, is unlike a lot of the teams that the Lakers beat last year, where they have 2 technicians in the half court in CP3 and Devin Booker. And they have a head coach who's able to maximize the bench unit. And then you have other guys that they win game 1 and they get confidence against the Lakers. Because this is what happens. The team that is supposed underdog, if they win, this applies for Memphis, this applies for the Suns, although the Suns are the better team and they have the better record. When the underdog starts to get confidence and they're a younger team, they start believing in themselves. And when a team believes in themselves, that shit gets scary. And things like the Miami Heat last year start to happen. So it could completely happen. I still think that the Lakers win this series ultimately, but I would happily be wrong about this. The Lakers, to me, have become a very unlikable team. Just based upon the way that they've carried themselves a little bit. Like, they've battled through adversity and whatnot, but I feel like they've fed into a lot of the narratives that they want to build around their own team rather than just playing the game of basketball. So personally, I would like to see the Suns win. I do think the Lakers win. Yeah.
I think we got to give credit to DeAndre Ayton as well.
Oh, no, for sure. Like, he showed up. And that was very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah. But Ariel, I think to counter like what you're saying in terms of LeBron James always losing game 1s, the thing about it is that even if he does lose those game 1s, he always has the better team. And I think that's what's the difference to me in this series. I don't believe he has the better team. They have the 2 best players in the series in himself and Anthony Disney. But like I don't but I mean, yeah, you can throw Devin Booker in there in that conversation too. But that's what I'm saying. The drop off between the 2 best players on each team isn't as significant as it once was when LeBron James was at the peak of his powers. So to think that he's just going to come back, he makes all the adjustment, and the other team roll over like what normally happens in the first round. I don't think Chris Paul, the Suns, Monty Williams, I don't think that's in them. They have dogs, they have people, and they know that they can compete with this team. Yeah. And like you said, they have confidence. So, I mean, it's a scary situation for LA, which is why I called it a must-win.
Totally.
I guess I can't disagree with that. Like, it's going to be one hell of a series, though. Like, I'm very excited for the series.
It's very similar to the Celtics series in 2018. Like, the Celtics had the better team on paper, but LeBron was just like, no, I'm LeBron James. I'm going to beat you. I don't care. But that's not the same LeBron we're seeing, and that Celtics team didn't have the veterans that the Suns do, and they didn't have the guys to carry them. So, yeah, it's kind of looking shaky.
Yeah. All I want to add on to this conversation, and I agree with literally everything that came out of Royal's mouth. Might never say that again, but I totally agreed with everything he just said. The only thing I want to add there is that I think if like AD starting at the 4 with next to Andre Drummond. They already don't have very many shooters on that squad, right? And so the spacing is not ideal for a LeBron-led team. Now, if you move Andre Drummond out of the starting 5 and now you're starting Marc Gasol, or you're just playing Marc Gasol a little bit more, if that's the adjustment that you have to make to be competitive in this series, you're probably not going to win this series. That dude is a solid basketball player, but I don't think he's a difference between losing a series and winning a series. He also hasn't played in a while, and he's just an older guy. So like, I think if you're just dusting him off and bringing him in and expecting that shift in strategy and adding that, shooting and passing combo to the floor is going to be the difference here, I think you're going to be wrong. I don't think that makes a difference. I think the Suns are a better team, and I think they probably win the series, which means that the Lakers are going to dust them tonight and we're all going to look stupid.
We is a lot of people. 3 of us. Or 2.5.
Not me.
2 of us. I'm willing to die on this hill, though, Ariel.
Listen, if you guys are right, I'm happy with it. If I'm right, I'm also happy with it. So we'll see what happens. But let's get to the Heat here, because the Heat are down 2-0. They played an interesting game in game 1. Both teams didn't play up to par, really. And then in game 2, we already know what happened. I mean, Dwayne Dedmon was the best player on the floor for the Miami Heat, which if that happens, they should inevitably get swept. So let's get to this because I want to know first, do you guys still believe that there's a chance that the Heat win the series? But second, what adjustment, if one single adjustment, do you think that the Heat should do in order to continue along in this series? Because it has been rough to watch, and it looks like this is why Spo gets paid the money that he does, because he has to have an answer for what the Heat are doing right now. And I don't have a concrete one. So, Ariel, we'll start with you. What is your answer for the Heat right now?
My answer for the Heat is show up in game 3 and play your goddamn game. Get out there and remind everybody why you won the Eastern Conference last year. You need to stop, like the way they came out in game 2. I like the disposition in game 1. They played hard, right? They didn't make anything below the 3-point line, and the Bucks played phenomenally defensively. They locked up the paint. The Heat, Jimmy had so many good looks and just didn't make them. The Heat shot phenomenally well from 3. There was a lot of things that went on in game 1 that kind of, you would expect a lot of them to reach their level in some form. And you would, and I thought that as a result, you would get another really close and competitive game 2.
No.
But the Bucks came out and punched the Heat in the mouth. They're out for vengeance here. Like, they very clearly have what happened last year on their minds. And I think that the personnel is a problem. Like, the Heat don't have that stretch big that they had next to Bam last year in Jay Crowder, because Trevor Ariza is just not shooting the ball well. He's not doing anything really well, particularly well in this series anyways. And it mucks up the spacing for the Heat. And then on top of that, Bam doesn't want to be aggressive. He seems to have no interest in going at the Bucks, taking advantage of the drop defense and the open elbow jumpers, and then the space that he's being given where he can probably get to the rim and try to initiate some contact. When he does get to the rim, it's soft. Like, it's not a take with force, with intent. As far as Jimmy goes, I thought his game was fine in game 1. Like, he played a really good floor game. His defense was great. He just missed a lot of looks that he'll normally make. And then in game 2, he looked a little bit disengaged.
A little
bit disengaged, to say
the
least.
Is a severe, gracious understatement for him. That boy looked stupidly disengaged. Boy, you took it right out of my mouth. I just can't get over the fact that Jimmy Butler came out and talked all this shit. Like, I understand that the target's been on Bam's back for a lot of the season because he hasn't really lived up to expectations, and he's the one player that we think should be showing up on a nightly basis as well as Jimmy Butler. But Jimmy Butler came out and said, I'm stupidly locked in. Before the season, he said, I have something up my sleeve. And he played great throughout the season, but in the 2 biggest games of the year,
playoffs, and now do the rest or whatever.
Do what, Jimmy? What are you doing? Like, no. Oh, it's just so frustrating seeing that I don't even care so much about the shooting, whatever it may be. Just the mental fortitude that Jimmy Butler showed last night was so ridiculously disappointing. And I feel like it's honestly just not being talked about enough. I know he was roasted on ESPN today, so that's cool. But there's been a lot of people not pointing enough fingers at Jimmy Butler. Like, he has been, for this game specifically, I'm not going to discredit him. He's been a great leader throughout the season, whatnot, and he was fantastic in the playoffs last year. But you can't have that type of effort and that type of mental focus in what is essentially a must-win game for the team. I was just so frustrated with that. That's all I wanted to say. But anyway,
there's a lot of – we got to give credit to the Bucks too. Like, they're defending them like crazy. Like, it's different than what he saw last year. Like, they were watching that Lakers series. They're playing below that screen. They're not letting him get any like clean kind of lanes to the rim. Like, Brook Lopez is there to meet him every time. There's a lot of stuff that he could adjust to in terms of more face up on the baseline, which is he's really good at. He gives that shimmy move. He's really quick. He's faster than most of the guys that are being put on him. There's also more stuff that they could do with elbow action. They're not really screening for Jimmy really well. The screens are weak. Like, they're not making contacts on them at all. Trevor Ariza might be the only guy who's making any sort of contact on those screens, and
he weighs anywhere from 120 to 150 pounds this series at least.
And they're not doing much for him. Like, you're seeing it out there. He's having trouble kind of navigating through this really bad spacing that's out there. It was also very weird to see. They didn't really run – like, the Bucks are hounding Duncan Robinson that second game. They were like, okay, you may get an open shot if you get to the handoff, but we're not even going to let you get to the handoff. Like, they were making sure that there was no counter to their counter. So that's the thing I'm looking forward to see how Spo does. I still think they have a shot. You know, the 2 home games are big like really big. That crowd's going to be electric. So hopefully that gives them enough energy. But you're kind of mad that it had to come to that. You don't want it to come to that sort of thing, especially when you're a team playing so much on the margins that anything like that can swing you from being like really down on the series. That's one thing I get why fans are mad at. Like I'm mad at that too. That's pretty like it's frustrating. And there's also the Bam stuff. The Bam stuff is really frustrating to me because he looks like he's in his head. That wasn't him last year. He was punishing the Bucks for playing away from him. He was hitting the mid. That's where everybody started seeing the shot. Like, okay, Bam has a mid range. When did he get this? Like, we didn't see this before the bubble, but everybody was like, okay, this is a thing we can pay attention to. And the Bucks apparently didn't care. And you should care, Bam. Like, and also Spo needs to run more stuff for him that gets him going down the lane. But you're also getting a lane. It's also upon you to take that spacing, do something with it. Like even Ben Simmons does stuff with it. You're looking like Draymond Green out there. Nobody wants to see that. We hate to see it. And hopefully that changes next game. I think they'll come out really strong in the next game. And I think game 3 will be like, game 3s are always fun whenever it's a 2-1 lead either way. It's like Mike Prada says this all the time. They're the best series to watch whenever a team is either down 2-1 or up 2-1 because it's normally the best game of the series.
We need to get to 2-1. That's the goal.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Gad, I'm going to answer your question unlike the other two guys. Yes, I do believe the Heat have a chance to get back into this series.
I think
they did.
I wanted to get there. I didn't get there.
You were talking
Sorry,
for
Aaron,
15 minutes and never got to your point. But either way, yes, I do believe that the Lakers, not the Lakers, goddamn. I do believe that the Heat have an opportunity to get back into this series. One of the things, and I'm stealing this take from either Ethan or Ira, but I don't want Jimmy Butler guarding Giannis. I just don't. I think that's what I'm saying. Like we have somebody who can take on that assignment, and I know there may be a little something there, where there's one of the guys that he wants to beat or whatever. He wants to accept that challenge. And as a coach, you can't really deny your best player. But now is the time where you have to deny your best player. Like it's taking too much out of him, and we need him more so on the offensive end when we have another player capable of doing a decent job at containing Giannis, if not a better job than what Jimmy could do. So that's one of the adjustments that I want to see. And I've been against this other adjustment for the entire season, but I think it's time you replace Trevor Ariza with Dedmon in the lineup. You have to. I think I don't know. I don't customarily like the matchup against teams, but we're getting absolutely killed by Brook Lopez in this series, and I think we need to match size with size. And so I would like to see Dedmon get some run with the starters just to kind of contain. Use them in that Myers role. Play him for the first 5 minutes, see what it could do with Brook Lopez, and then go to your depth lineup or your regular lineup. But we need to match the size because we're getting killed on the boards, getting killed on the glass. Nobody's doing anything with Brook Lopez. And, we need Bam's defensive services elsewhere. I believe if you give Bam the Giannis assignment, then we focus less on him offensively because Jimmy will be able to do what he customarily does on offense. You don't focus on Bam's lack of it because Jimmy picks up the slack and Bam's shutting down Giannis or doing the best that he can. So I think those are two adjustments that I would like to see made heading into game 3, but nothing too drastic, bro. Nothing too drastic. What we do works.
I think there's a contingency of Heat fans who are like they're split on that. They're split on the Dedmon stuff. Like, and also there's the none question. Like Goran Dragic might be starting next game. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see that. And there's like fans who are still split on that. And I don't know why. I'd be okay with that as well. Like that's an easy move. You just slot him in, and I'm fine with bringing none off the bench, or maybe not even bringing him at all. The lineup might get even more short because Spo likes to cut those rotations really, really short come playoff time. So I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, the Dragic thing is one thing that I think you're going to see, and I wouldn't mind seeing it at all.
Yeah, I think my only problem with that is if you bring Dragic into the starting lineup, then you essentially lose all of your scoring off of the bench. Like or with that second unit doesn't have anybody to stabilize it. If you put Kendrick on there with Tyler, they're both up and down, so you don't really have anything to kind of like keep the ship. Or you're gonna have to play Goran north of 35 minutes a game, and we saw how easily that ran him down early on in the season. So I'm cool with none starting because at least he's trying defensively. He's competing on that end of the ball. And so I don't really worry as much about his offense, but I don't know how I feel. I'm just not a big fan of the Goran starting thing 2 years in a row.
So I'm actually on the exact opposite end of the spectrum here with regards to everything Royal just said. I prefer starting Goran and not starting Dedmon. That doesn't mean that I don't think Dedmon needs to be used more in this matchup. Clearly, the Heat need the rebounding. They need the interior presence, especially if Bam's guarding on the perimeter or doing anything other than, I mean, even if he's at the rim, like Brook Lopez is a problem for him. He's much bigger. He's just a bigger dude. So it's a tough matchup defensively for Bam. I do like the idea of staggering Dedmon's minutes with Bam and playing him as well at the same time as Bam in certain stretches in the game. But I just feel like if you start him, it's kind of hard. Like, who's your backup big? Are you playing Bjelica? Like, I don't really love that idea in this matchup. Though maybe, if you're playing Bjelica, it gives you that stretch big next to Bam that kind of offers you a very, very poor man's facsimile of what Kelly Olynyk gave you next to Bam, and maybe that pulls Brook Lopez out of the paint a little bit. But I think that he'd come out game 3. I think the energy's electric. I think Jimmy Butler is not going out like this. There's no way. And I think he has a big bounce-back game. I don't know what the thing is with Bam. I don't know if he's in his head. It definitely seems that way. I'm working in more guard screens for him, and I need him to take more of the initiative of attacking the space that he's getting on offense. I think that he get the W in game 3, and we get a series here.
Okay, so whole lot to unpack from a lot of different things that you guys said. Ariel kind of maybe stole all the points that I wanted to make. But I'm going to combine what Royal said with Dedmon, and you have him in that Myers-Leonard role, right? You play him the beginning of the first half, the beginning of the second half. I'm going to counter that and say this would be a curveball, and it would be pretty weird. But at the same time, this is the type of adjustment I could see Spo making for like 12 minutes a game. You play Bjelica to start. You have him on Brook Lopez. I just tell him to give 6 minutes in each half of the highest amount of effort possible on Brook Lopez, right? And then you increase Dedmon's minutes, and you just play bigger. So if that means one of the guards, whether it's Hero, whether it's none, has to lessen their minutes, I'm totally fine with that because you can't roll those 3-guard lineups out there. I think also you can start Goran because Goran is someone that understands how to move off ball in order to get open and get in the vision, the cone of vision of the playmakers. And he's also someone that is a willing passer. None in this series offensively has really, really struggled to get in that cone of vision for Jimmy and Bam. Like, he has not been good off ball. And that's because he's just been guarded by other players that know how to play better defensively off ball. So I think if you can, it's really weird to think of this, but if you start Goran, Duncan, Jimmy, Bam, and Bjelica, and you have Bam on Giannis, you have Jimmy on Middleton, you have Duncan on Drew, and you have Goran on DiVincenzo, then you at least are giving yourself a hope, and there's some offense there, and you're only playing Bjelica like 12 minutes. You still have Dedmon off the bench. And I think none would benefit playing offensively against guys like Bryn Forbes as opposed to a guy like Drew Holiday. So that's maybe one adjustment that I would make. It's crazy. I don't know if it would work. In my head, it's working, though. And that just – you have someone that can pull Brook Lopez out of the paint. Or if Giannis is guarding Bjelica, then, I mean, that's a win for the team anyways. So we'll see what ends up happening. I think that just, to me – makes a lot of sense to be a Spo type of adjustment that is just an absolute curveball that the Bucks really would not have any preparation for, because that is a lineup that I don't think we've even run this entire year.
Starting Goran just feels like you're punting on the bench production. Like that's my only objection to starting Goran. It just feels like you're punting on any type of bench production whatsoever, or you're going back to relying on Tyler Hero.
More though. Like my thing is like you can't like you're going to be playing one bigger on the bench. You can also have Iggy play exclusively as the other guy that's guarding Giannis. So you don't have to have a Reese on him, and you have.
I think I'm out on Iggy playing.
Well, I'm total. If that's what it comes down to, I'm cool with that. Like you're not like you need to have Bam on Giannis for 30+ minutes, because if he's not going to play offense, then he damn sure should be giving us that DPOY performance on defense on Giannis, and that's something that we haven't gotten yet. Not that Giannis is. I don't know if Giannis has honestly lit us up. I don't know what his numbers look like exactly, but he's been Giannis this series. Like he's been really good. So I guess Marco didn't like my take. But I think you just have to do something crazy at this point. And it's not that what we have done has not been working that much. I just think the Bucks team as currently constructed just has our number. And that's because we're playing small on the bench and we're just not good enough offensively with the starters right now. So, Ariel,
Julius Randle, most improved player.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I kind of hate everything that all these options like Iggy's killing the Heat. Although Dr. Struess in the comments is lying to us and telling us that he has the best net rating for the Heat this series.
He does.
I hate him for that. As far as playing Bielitsa, like last time, what was the game that Spo started him in and it went like horribly wrong recently?
The Bucks, right? Without Jimmy?
Yes, you're right. Yes.
It didn't go horribly wrong. It went horribly right when Bielitsa was starting.
Well, it depends on whose perspective, but I mean that game, like he did not look ready to go, so I don't really know if this is the matchup for him. But if we've got breaking news from the 5 Reasons Sports Network over here in the chat, telling us that Julius Randle just won MIP. Well deserved. Okay. I think he's the guy. I think he deserves it. He's taking his game to another level. Congrats.
Did you guys talk about Utah having 2 6 men of the year candidates?
I think Joe Ingles is a better basketball player.
No, then Jordan Clarkson for sure. I just don't understand. This is the second year in a row where one team can have 2 6 men in the final 3 for 6 months in a year. It doesn't make – they don't math good with the voters. Like it doesn't.
Just rename it the bench player of the year.
Yeah, okay. Seriously. I think that makes more sense. It'll be less.
Bedman would get that award, so I guess
obviously
it's interesting. But – I mean, I guess I do want to touch on Heat Bucks one more time here. I really don't. It sucks that we're at this point because I look at all the options that I feel like the Heat should potentially have, and they just don't really have an answer outside of, I guess, the one thing that I don't want to see, like you guys alluded to, is Jimmy guarding Giannis. I want to see Bam on Giannis. That's the one thing that I want to see. Hopefully we're able to get it, because I feel like that's just one of the few ways where this team would have a chance, because Middleton has been good in big moments. So I think you put Jimmy on Middleton, allow Jimmy to play off ball, because Jimmy playing on ball the entire game, 1, he's tired. 2, he's not playing off ball. And that's where he's at his best. I'm really hoping there's a lot of adjustments that Spell makes, because to this point, I think he's honestly gotten out-coached just by virtue of how good the Bucks' talent is defensively to match up with guys like Jimmy and Bam. But at the same time, oh, there Marco goes again. He really doesn't like me tonight. But I don't know. Do you guys feel like Spo has to make something change here, or does it not need to be the craziest thing in the world?
I don't think it needs to be the biggest change in the world. I think it's just small, little things that Spo can change to help this team play a little bit better. I think one of the points that we've been missing is the loss of Dan Craig, which is something that's been completely undersold this entire year. Those assistants mean a lot to a head coach, and we want to dump it all on Spo, but a lot of times Dan Craig helped him in a lot of playoff situations, just kind of being a steadying voice. And so it's another thing that they were talking about with Ira and Ethan, where they were talking about potentially bringing back Fizdale as another voice, another strong voice on that bench who can help. And I love the idea as well. Like, I mean, look, some of these coaches that we have on the bench could potentially be great, but they are also extremely young in terms of being assistant coaches. Chris Quinn, Caron Butler, young guys. Anthony Carter, like these are good guys to have in for the culture. But I don't know if they're as prepared as some of the other coaches that we've had in the past in terms of getting the team ready for a playoff series.
To me, I don't know if there's any massive adjustment, just basically because I don't feel like the Heat have a ton of personnel options. So maybe you change some stuff scheme-wise in terms of like having Bam bring the ball up more, having him involved in plays where he has to make decisions and not necessarily just giving him the ball at the elbow and he's looking DHO every single time. Maybe you have more guard screen for him and stuff like that. But just come out and be ready to play. Like we've seen them too frequently this season come out without the focus and the competitive disposition that's, required to win games in the NBA. And they come out and they drop games to teams that they should beat. And then in the last game, they came out and they missed a million defensive rotations. Nothing was crisp defensively, and they got the doors blown off of them in the first quarter. So I just want them to come out, feed off the energy in the arena, be ready to go.
Yeah. To close it out, yeah, I pretty much agree with everything the guys are saying. I guess the one thing that I would watch out for, other than lineup adjustments, is I think they might go heavier into the zone like they did against the Celtics last year. They were like, okay, these guys are they're kind of tearing our regular defense apart. So we're going to throw this at them, and we got to be crisp with our zone because they were really crisp in that Celtics series with the zone. But the Celtics still broke it down. It's just that Miami was able to score enough, and that's also a thing they had to do is they had to be able to score. They were a top 10 offense all year, or not all year, but at the end of the year. So we all saw that. The first game wasn't a mirage. They can still be competitive. I look forward to like the first home game. It's going to be very fun. People should like stop losing their minds. It's not going to be fine, but I think we're still in for a good series. I think the last game seemed like an aberration of everything else coming together in terms of the Bucks shooting, the Heat's defense being lazy, Bam and Jimmy still not finding their groove. I think the next game is going to tell us a lot, and it'll either be at least a 6-game series, or if not, it's probably going to be a gentleman's sweep at best.
Yeah. I mean, all we can do is hope. 17,000 fans at American Airlines Arena, which means by the third quarter, that place is going to be packed. And I am excited to see what that sounds like. So come third quarter, I'm going to turn my sound on. It's going to be an interesting game. I still think the Heat, like Ariel has kind of said today on the stream last night, this should be a really interesting game, and I'm expecting the Heat to show up. And hopefully they win. If they show up and they don't win, oh well. If they don't show up, shame on this team. We're blowing it up. So at this point, not many things we can do, but any last words, Royal? Thank you for joining us. Last words for tonight before we depart.
No, thank you guys for having me on the show. I'm a fan of the show because I'm a fan of you guys. So keep up the great work. You guys have been nothing but great for this network. Great additions. Really appreciate you guys like taking on the burden of joining me in the post game, dealing with me ranting and shit like that. But love what you guys are doing here, and we need more of this type of content on the network.
Ooh,
Appreciate
That's awesome, man.
you, OG.
Appreciate
You. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that was
Royal.
awesome. Thank you, Royal. Okay, so
King.
with those beautiful words from the man himself, Playoff Royal, we will be leaving for today because we have some playoff basketball to watch. But the streams will be back. I don't know if there's any streams tomorrow. Is there a Clutch Corner, Royal? Ever?
Yeah, sure.
Thursday.
One of these days. No,
For
don't.
sure, we'll be back on Thursday. Full Court Press will be back at some point next week, whether it is after games 3 and 4, whatever it may be. But we will be back. Thank you guys for listening. Play the video, Manny.
Eating